Good morning. This morning we are going to practice writing chemical equations. Here's the steps. First thing you want to do is you want to identify the products and the reactants, and you put the yield sign in the middle so you can put the products on the right and the reactants on the left. When you're determining the products and reactants, you must remember the rules of bonding. The diatomic molecules, lone metals and solid nonmetals, you just use the symbol. Ionic compounds, this is the hardest. We have to do the swap and drop. Covalent compounds are the easiest. We have to follow the prefix names. And you need to remember the common acids, the three of them that we were supposed to memorize and be able to recognize them. Separate the reactants with a plus sign and the products with a plus sign, if there's two of each, and in the end you'll balance. So here is an example. We need to first do a yield sign, and then we need to identify the reactants and the products. Well, this one's pretty easy. We said hydrogen and nitrogen monoxide yield. That yield sign is the arrow. That could be yield, that could be produces, results in, any of those things that mean we started out with these two things and ended up with something different. The bonds and the reactants were broken and reformed in the products. So the first one, hydrogen, we know that is a diatomic molecule. So we'll write H. I'm going to do that in a darker color. So we'll do H. And we know that's H2, that's one of the diatomic molecules. Nitrogen monoxide. Well, one nitrogen, because there's no prefix, monooxide, NO, yields water and nitrogen. So we all know H2O is the formula for water, and nitrogen is also a diatomic molecule, N2. So once we are done that is the skeleton equation. We're saying that hydrogen reacts with nitrogen monoxide and yields water and nitrogen. Then the last step is balance. We're not going to balance them here because we have much practice with the balancing. So let's look, and here is the final answer if you would like to check that out after doing your first example. Let's do example number 2. Adding sodium oxide to water produces sodium hydroxide. Well, I'm going to start with the yield sign because for me, that divides the products and the reactants in my brain. Adding sodium oxide to water, so those are our reactants, produces. That is our yield sign. Adding this to water, so we have sodium oxide plus water produces sodium hydroxide. And we only have one product here. This is a synthesis reaction. What was sodium oxide, Na, and oxygen, O. But here's where we have to stop. This is a metal plus a nonmetal. This is an ionic compound. So you must do the swap and drop to do the correct formula. Na, O, Na is a -1, O is, a +1. We do the swap, we do the drop, so this is Na2. So at this point you need to be able to predict. And then produces sodium hydroxide. We have Na, the sodium, hydroxide, OH. This is also ionic, so we need to remember to do the swap and the drop. And this one's easy because it's 1 and 1, we don't need the parentheses. So once we finish deciding the reactants and the products and writing their formulas according to the rules of bonding, we need the balance. I just wanted to show you this. This sometimes confuses students having an element in the more than one compound. So on a reactant side, we have 2 sodiums 2 oxygens, one in the sodium oxide and one in the water, and then 2 hydrogens. And then we would balance this. Pretty straightforward. A 2 here will give us 2 of everything. So let's look at our, and here it is. We don't need this parentheses here because there's only 1 hydroxide. Let's look at a more difficult one. And we will check this one out. We're going to start by trying to determine the reactants and the products. We want to look for our yield sign. We want to look for that word produces, makes, results in. This one's nice and easy because it actually says yield. So bingo, that's the beginning. Combining calcium hydroxide and phosphoric acid. So these are reactants. Combining these two yield calcium phosphate, a product. Well, let's just do the easy part first. Water. Combining calcium hydroxide, that is Ca and OH. Hydroxide you will, plus a nonmetal, OH. The hydroxide time we do need a parenthesis around the hydroxide. It would be CaOH2. And phosphoric acid, we are given the formula. That's not one of the 3 that we have to have memorized. We need to know sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, and nitric. Make sure you have them written on your reference table for the final exam. They are on the basic knowledge notes from way back. Calcium phosphate. What's a calcium? And phosphate is a polyatomic ion, PO4. This is a metal plus a polyatomic ion. We need to remember we have to do the swap and drop in order to do the formula. Calcium is an alkaline earth metal. The phosphate, we look on page 7, and it has an oxidation number of -3. We bring down the 2, we bring down the 3. There's more than one phosphate, so we need a parentheses. And there we go. Let's see. Oh, good. So our last step is to balance this one. And here's one I want to show you a neat trick. The calcium hydroxide and the phosphoric acid. The calcium is going to bond with the phosphate, leaving the hydroxide to bond with the hydrogen. And it produces water, but we can think of water as a hydrogen and a hydroxide. This way, if we do it like this, that means our hydroxide stays intact, and that will make our balancing so much easier. So to balance, we can look at just the calcium, the hydroxide, the hydrogen, and the phosphate. And I will let you guys, well, I'll do the numbers and then I'll let you guys balance. And 1 calcium, this is 2 hydroxides, 3 hydrogens, and 1 phosphate. 3 calcium, that's 1 hydroxide and 1 hydrogen and 2 phosphates. So we have correctly drawn the skeleton equation, and now we just need the balance. If you would like to pause here and balance it, and then you can check it. Okay. Here we go. Here is the answer to this one. So now you can go on and complete the assignment. Message me if you have any issues.